Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road Journey. For today's episode, I've come to Devon, an interesting county that uniquely features 2 national parks and 2 coastlines. It's in the top 5 largest counties, yet it's home to only 1.1 million people, and its largest export is probably ambrosia custard. Devon knows how they make it so creamy. This week we'll be exploring this fine county on a journey that'll take us from Barnstaple to Exmouth. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and we're not actually starting in Barnstaple because already I've been distracted. Come and have a look at this. I've come to what's known as the Valley of Rocks. I'm sure it's mentioned in my guidebook somewhere, and it's located to the north of Devon near a place called Linton. It is indeed, as the name suggests, a valley of rocks where the rock formations are somewhat unusual but certainly magnificent. The valley is thought to have formed in the Ice Age where, because of a large sheet of ice, the East Lynn River was forced to take a route alongside this ice sheet before reaching the sea, and in doing so it carved out this valley. As time went on and the ice sheet melted away, the river was able to take a more direct route to the sea, leaving this valley without a river, but some fantastic rock formations, and surely it's one of the prettiest places in the country. And then there's Barnstaple. In the days of my guidebook, a fairly busy town with around 14,000 residents. The town was built around a harbour where wool was exported and imported, but even by the time my guidebook was published, all of this had come to an end. And it was nature that ruined things for Barnstaple by bringing a load of silt along the River Tor, which ended up in the harbour, to the point where, over the years, so much silt amassed that you could no longer operate a harbour or even move a boat around, so that was the end of that. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to visit Queen Anne's Walk, built in 1713 and today a Grade 1 listed structure. Its purpose was to serve as a meeting place for the town's merchants, and at the time it looked out onto Barnstaple Quay, a busy part of Barnstaple Harbour which saw ships coming in from all across the world. But as mentioned, the harbour didn't last forever, and eventually the quay was filled in, giving us this sunken patio, which doesn't really do a lot. And following the harbour's demise, the building also sat around not really doing a lot. It was used as a Masonic hall for a bit, and now it's used as a cafe. Might get a coffee, actually. With a coffee obtained, we can move on to our next destination, and to do so we'll need the A361. However, today's A361 is not the A361 we're looking for, because in the old days it didn't exist and instead used to follow this route, and that's the route we'll be taking, because whilst the old A361 has been replaced, the road still exists, just with a new name instead. The road deposits us into South Molton, a small town that in the days of my guidebook was an even smaller town. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to visit the town hall or guild hall that was built in the early 1740s, and it's interesting because when they built it they reused parts of Stowe House, a mansion that was located in Cornwall that was demolished. Not only did they reuse some of the stone to build the main structure, they disassembled the interior and transported it to South Molton, where it would be reassembled to recreate some of the original rooms of Stowe House. Our next destination is the town of Tiverton. However, I wanted to make a quick stop to take a look at the Beeple's Hill Standing Stone and to admire the lovely view of the A361. And indeed, because of the A361's construction, the stone had to be moved a whopping 50 yards from its original location, at which point the opportunity was taken to add a nice gravel surround with a bench, and the end result is like standing in a lay-by at the roadside. As for the stone, nobody really knows how old it is or what it was for, but it's believed to have been used as a tether stone for animals, making its preservation completely pointless, now with the added benefit of costing the local council an annual maintenance fee. If you want to see some stones, might I suggest the Valley of Rocks, as we saw earlier? Up next, the town of Tiverton, and in the days of my guidebook it was a fairly busy town with around 10,000 residents, but at the time the town was suffering from a bit of a decline. Most of the industries that the town had been built around, such as wool, had all gone out of business, and to make matters worse, during the 17th and 18th century there were 3 massive fires that each time destroyed most of the town. In more modern times, things weren't looking much better either. During the 1980s, they constructed the A396, a bypass or relief road, and this led to the pedestrianisation of the town centre and a decline in retail sales. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to visit the town hall or local church, but I think I found something slightly more interesting, and it's this, the Tiverton Canal Basin, which was the southwestern terminus for the Great Western Canal. You'll notice that the canal is built above ground level, and underneath we find some archways. This is because it was originally set up with a series of lime kilns. Above each archway would have been an individual lime kiln where the canal's main cargo limestone could have been unloaded and processed immediately. It was constructed in around 1810, and unusually for a canal, it managed to remain profitable for several decades. Whilst the limestone business came to an end in 1924, the canal continued to be used for the transport and growing of lilies, which, once harvested, would make their way to Covent Garden in that there London. Unfortunately, the canal wasn't maintained and started to fall apart, leading to its closure in 1962, although by this time it didn't really matter all that much because no one was using it. The canal was saved and restored in the 1970s by the local council, who made whatever was left of the original lime kilns a Grade 2 listed structure. Delightful stuff, but we're going to make our way out of Tiverton now and head to our next destination, the city of Exeter. To get there, we'll be using the A396, which, other than having a few corners smoothed out and made less dangerous, remains the same as it was in the old days. It will take us through the village of Bickleigh, and is that an old railway bridge? Yes, it is. Built on the Exe Valley Railway in 1884, running from Stoke Cannon to Dulverton, it would have carried the railway over the River Exe. Of course, closed by beaching, it now sits very abandoned. However, a short distance away is the site of Cadeley and Bickleigh Railway Station, which today looks far less abandoned because it's home to the Devon Railway Centre. It opened in 1998, featuring one of the largest narrow gauge railway collections. They've got a 2-foot gauge railway offering passenger rides, and they've got a separate 7¼ inch gauge railway offering passenger rides. There's also a model village and several train sets, railway model layouts, but I think the best thing of all is the fully restored Victorian station building. No doubt it's a fun day out for all. Exeter, a large city, even in the days of my guidebook when around 60,000 people lived here. It's an odd mix of old medieval structures and 1950s structures because during the second small disagreement of 1939 to 1945, Exeter got bombed to buggery and the city centre had to be mostly rebuilt. My guidebook suggests a visit to Rougemont Castle ruins, of which only the gatehouse remains. That said, it was built in the 1060s, so it's done quite well to last this long. As for the rest of the castle, it didn't do too badly either, but it was all demolished in the 1700s to make way for a newer building. In 1786, crowds of 50,000 were wowed by the ascent of a 75-foot wide hydrogen-filled balloon which took off from the grounds of the castle, carrying its owner off into the sky. At the time, it likely would have been the first time the people of Exeter would have witnessed such a thing, which explains the large crowds. The balloon pilot would travel 10 miles out of Exeter, landing in a field before making his way back to Exeter on horseback. It's not clear as to whether the horses went with him in the balloon or if he just stole one that was nearby. Oh, that's it for Exeter, is it? Are we not going to see the cathedral, no? I guess not. Okay, moving on then to our final destination, the town of Exmouth, which is a town that sits on the mouth of the River Exe. The clue was in the name. Exmouth was a bit of a nothing town until the 18th century when tourism started to increase, turning Exmouth into possibly the first seaside resort town in Devon, further strengthened when the railways were built in 1861, which brought even more tourists to the town. I don't know what it was they were coming to see. My guidebook only makes one suggestion, and that's to visit the Esplanade, which I guess is this, the beachfront. Back in the day, I imagine this is where all the action took place, such as sitting. But if you take a walk up the beach, there is something interesting to find. And it's this, Orcombe Point. Well, no, not this, although this structure known as the Geoneedle is very interesting. What's more interestinger is found below us because the Geoneedle marks the most westernly point of the Jurassic coastline. Some of you may remember this from last week, but in case you missed it, the Jurassic coastline is a 95-mile-long stretch of coastline that represents hundreds of millions of years in time or world history. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and along the coastline you'll find various rock formations like the ones found here at Orcombe Point. Here we find layers of red mudstone and sandstone which make up the cliffs which were formed in the early Triassic period some 200 million years ago. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.